you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and your current interests?
Sure. So my name is Caleb. I'm a fourth-year PhD student studying nanoengineering, and my research is on soft robotics.
Great. And what exactly brought you to this point?
Yeah, so in high school I was a big computer nerd. I liked building and breaking and fixing computers, but to me it seemed like a lot of people could do that, so I wanted to find something that was a little bit different. And so I started looking up, reading about nanotechnology, and so then that got me into studying engineering physics in undergrad, and then I came here to do nanoengineering for my PhD here at UCSD.
So nanoengineering and robotics, I'm not seeing the connection. What are some of the things that you've done here?
So I use nanoengineering to find new materials to make robots safer, perhaps faster, more effective, so that way they can collaborate, interact with people and their environment more effectively.
So that's where the soft robot comes in.
Exactly.
What are some of the things that you've worked on?
With soft robotics, it's really hard to sneak up on a fish, especially if you're a robot. So when a lot of people are studying fish underwater, they use an ROV, which is a remotely operated vehicle, and these things look like a big submarine with propellers on it. And so the trouble is that propellers make a lot of noise, and so you might scare off the fish before you get close enough to be able to study it or take a picture of it. And also these robots are made out of big rigid materials, and so if it bumps into something fragile like a coral reef, you might damage either the coral reef or the fish. And so what I'm working on is a soft robotic fish, so that way if it bounces into something, it won't hurt it, and it can move silently through the water, so that way we can actually study something before we spook it off.
Does it look like a fish?
It looks like an eel, actually. So it's maybe a foot long, and it's made out of artificial muscles, which is the focus of my research. And so I put artificial muscles into this eel to get it to undulate and actually swim through the water like an eel.
And does the body of the robot itself contain a camera, or what exactly are you hoping to do with it?
Yeah, so in the future we hope to mount a camera to it. Right now we're just at the stage of getting it to work and swim like a fish. And so that's taken us a long time, and we're finally to that point where it kind of swims like a fish. What's really neat about it is it's transparent. And so one of the concerns is how do you blend into the environment so that way you don't scare the fish by this big bulky scary object, but with this object it's completely transparent, so it uses what they call passive camouflage. And so you don't have to paint it like a coral reef ahead of time, it just automatically blends into the environment because you can see through it. And because it uses electricity to make it move, it's completely silent. So instead of propellers for movement, it has this completely silent wiggling motion, so it can sneak through the water and sneak up on fish.
Very cool. So I know this is just one aspect of your research. You've also done jumping soft robots and things like that. Can you tell me a little bit about why that might matter for robots moving forward?
So when I was at, so I haven't quite worked on jumping robots yet. I did work on a flying robot when I was at NASA, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory up at NASA. I did a summer project where we were trying to apply soft robotics to exploring satellites and moons and asteroids. So the trouble with asteroids and small moons is that they don't have a lot of gravity, so it's really hard to get a robot to orbit around it or a satellite to orbit around it to be able to study what the asteroid or the moon looks like. And so what we looked at was using soft robotics to generate their own electric fields to stick them to the asteroid or the moon, so that way they kind of generate their own gravity in a sense.
So soft robots are really applicable in almost every field.
Yeah, and so one of the concerns, one of the biggest applications of soft robotics, I feel like, is in human-robot interaction. And so if you want a robot to work with a human, a lot of the robots are, again, made out of these metal or plastic parts that move very quickly, and in industrial settings, they usually put the robot into a cage to keep the robot from hurting people. In fact, I was just reading an article a few weeks ago where they said that in this industrial accident, a robot smeared a person across a wall. And so I hope to use soft robotics so that way if the robot hits somebody, it won't hurt them. It'll just bounce off of them. Kind of like, more like Gumby instead of the Terminator.
Well, thanks for your time.
Thank you.